What's up, everybody? Come rain, come sunshine, I will give you praise. In my good and bad times, Lord, I will give you praise. There's nobody better than you, Papa. Nobody better than you. Oh, let me anywhere you want, I go follow you. Yeah. I go follow you. Oh, where was she lying? Where she lying? Well, it's coming over. Yeah, coming over. Well, it's coming over. This should probably be one of those moments where I miss being at the studio, being able to play some tracks. But you know what? I'll do my best to still keep this on radio feel like I should always do, right? I have my mini mixer and playing my jams to put you on that right Sunday groove. That was actually Praise You by Mpikwa. And best believe it, it's on that gospel sound, and I love it because it brings such a different vibe to everything. That's really what it does. Anyway, we are tuning in back again on Africa on Focus. And of course, I am your host, Miss Abba, the one and only. I am coming back at you with sharing our success stories. That's basically what we are about. And you are listening to High Radio, the voice of the next generation. We're still going strong on our lockdown specials. I think it's been, it's almost getting near to 2 or 3 months where I've been airing from home, still from the city of Amsterdam, to talk to you about on a few things. And anyway, this is Africa on Focus. Please share and spread the word on your timeline. Today, we have a very special guest that we're going to have. We are continuing our conversation on the leadership that Africa needs, particularly Ghana. And our special guest, Palgrave Boakye-Danquah, is going to join us again. Such an inspiring interview that we've had with him 2 weeks ago. Which was strong. And he himself emphasized that no, we need to have and make this interview a 2-part interview. And he was absolutely right. Absolutely right. Africa on Focus with myself and, of course, my co-host Donnie, who I will be getting back into here within a few seconds. But first, let's get into these announcements. This is Africa on Focus. Make sure that you spread the word on your timeline. You can also tune in via YouTube. They're also on live and, of course, on our other platforms, the TuneIns, Ghana Web, GhanaWaves.com, all of the places that we are present. Last week, we've had an interactive talk with our monthly segment, Women About Business. We've had a special guest who is a financial consultant, Merverly Ejay Benjamin, who came on the show to talk to myself and Kimberly Ofori. In case you missed it, you can still catch up on that episode on the High Radio Facebook channel, but you can also go to Africa on Focus on YouTube and backtrack. Plus, the recap is also going to come out as a podcast. Yes, Africa on Focus is also available as your podcast on all streaming platforms. We recently, announced a collaboration with Aftown, but you can also find us on Spotify, iTunes, everything. We're doing it major. I'm your host, Miss Abba, and I can't wait to really get Donnie in and to get his idea on what's been going on this last couple of weeks. Let's do this. Hello, Donnie. How are you?
Hi. Good evening. I'm fine. How are you?
Good evening. I'm good. You're always on this chill vibe, like hey, good evening.
Is-
Nothing's wrong. I'm good.
Nothing's wrong. Can't complain. I'm always
Oh
counting my
gosh.
blessings. Is there a
Yeah,
delay?
yeah. That's really the goal. You know what? I discovered that in the first couple of 2 minutes it does, but as time progresses, it disappears.
Mm, okay.
That's what I realized. Yeah. So how has been your Sunday? Tell me.
Sunday has been chill. It's all right. I like to keep my Sundays, let's say, quiet, positive, and yeah,
Yeah.
actually just came back with meeting up with a friend of mine who, like, we've been friends since, like maybe 15 years, and I hadn't seen him
Oh,
for
really?
8 years. So yeah, it was really good seeing him again. He's doing well. So yeah, that kind of like puts me in a good space as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was. It was.
And how's your Sunday?
It was a throwback. A throwback meeting.
Yeah, he definitely had some stories for me because some of the events I actually I had forgotten, but and that's the cool thing because the things I remember, he doesn't necessarily remember or like in those details, but then he also had stories, and I was like, wait, was this really happen? Was I there? He was like, yeah, it was you, and I was okay. Yeah, so that's kind of like it
Yeah.
was fun to revisit those stories. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's good. It's the memories that keep us alive, in a sense, isn't
It
it?
is. It is a memory that
It
keeps
does.
us alive and going. It's all that we have from the past,
Exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. I
whether
uh,
whether
I
good or bad.
co-sign on that. Great, great. So any demonstrations this week? Have you been on the Black Lives Matter, or did you catch any of that? Or
Yeah, that was well. It started last week. Um, started last week. Let's say Monday in Amps with the Amsterdam protest. I
yeah.
was at the Amsterdam protest.
Oh yeah, you did
And
you did
then
share that.
yeah, I was on the Amsterdam's protest. Was a powerful one. Like
Hmm.
like watching from home and watching from, let's say, from your telephone and stuff.
Yeah,
It's different. It's like that people are there. You can sometimes already tell that, hey, this is a like a peaceful or powerful process. But once
yeah,
you are out there with them, once you are like within the public and amongst the many participants, it like the energy, it strikes you to really to feel something, even though
right,
even though you might not even be for it. Like being there
right.
already gives you that vibe. So it was really good to go, to be out there. Loved it. I came across some people that I knew from way back, so that was refreshing to see that, hey,
Hmm.
all right, so my brothers and sisters are also for the cause. So
Right.
yeah, that was good. It was a really good protest. um
Yeah. It was a good
yeah.
united feel, I hear from people that were there.
Yeah, and actually, what amazed me the most about that particular process being the first one, that like as many of, let's say, from the black community that I'd seen, there was also a lot from what we term as the allies. So also from the European community, and from
Friends of
there were some
Black Lives Matters.
yeah, they were like huge. So I was like, oh wait, this literally shows it's not only a black struggle. So that was beautiful. That was uplifting
Yeah,
to see. That was big.
yeah. I would agree
And
with that. I think it was good
how's
seeing
your
that
week?
too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my week is always hectic, Donnie. I'm never just doing nothing. I'm always on this hectic vibe, but it's always for a good thing. Of course,
Mm.
I've been thinking about really where I was at to really to kind of re-strategize, as a sense of how can we empower more of our community, as in sense of particular other avenues, business, education, you know what I mean? Um, I've been really working on that because that is really what I'm passionate on doing, and obviously for the show, really thinking of how can we keep the conversation going concerning these areas where young people could tune in and discover a sense of themselves where they could contribute to their community, know what it means to contribute to the community instead of shying away. What in the previous years we've always been doing, because for some reason, and that would be our discussion point on the Let's Chat Africa, we always find this goal to fit in with people at the top, and where however they might look like. For somebody, this might look like marrying a white person. For some person, this look like let me just sleek my hair and talk in a certain way or distance myself from the community. And that is something that I would really like to see reversed, where it's for the better of people, definitely. So that has really been my game plan this last week. Absolutely.
Amazing.
In the meantime, for all of you who tuned in, just give a shout out to Eben, our weekly supporter and our connector and networker, who always makes sure that we are set and having our interesting guests. Shout out to you, Eben, from wherever in the world that you are. And look at that, Donnie. Donnie is showing that he's taking on notes. He's taking on notes because Evan had something to say about Donnie's cup for drinking. Let me put it that way. I hope you can see that, Evan. And also shout out to Hamid Rahman, who's also a lovely guy I know, who's saying, you people are doing a great job. We need more of this discussion to make an impact on our continent. I am co-signing with that. Without even further ado, we've had this special guest on the show already. He's been joining us on our conversation on setting up the leadership that Africa really needs. And not just as any type of figure or somebody that just, has an opinion about that. It's really a person of impact, one to look out for. And I said the other day, it's good that we have a conversation with him, because there's going to be a time where he's going to be overly booked. We probably won't even, have any access to his agenda or whatever, because he is, a noted personality and so much more that people should really engage with. And I feel only his impact thus far is going to be even more and more enormous, as we are also passionate about youth leadership, not just passionate about that, but also looking for ways as how could we contribute to our continent as either we decide to go back or any of that. Already mentioned, he is the immediate past head of programs at the Danquah Institute, and now the founding executive director of Kandifo Institute, a policy research think tank that focuses on leadership, especially youth leadership, economy, and governance. And why he should be part of this conversation, all of that, we are going to find out that and more in a bit. Let's just have him over so that we could get to talk to him. How are you, Palgrave?
I am very well, thank you, Abba and Donnie. How are you all doing? Good evening.
We're doing good. You're looking festive.
Thank you very much.
It's good. It's good to have you on again and to be able to talk to you. I know your day is busy. Last time you even mentioned, listen, I've been here from 6 a.m. You probably have a lot more hours to go.
I do. Today actually wasn't like that. I think I got in here around 10 o'clock in the morning, and I needed to organize my week,
right,
and put some plans together. But it's good to be here again. I think that the last 2 weeks was extremely insightful, and I look forward to today's conversation. Things have changed quite a bit globally, concerning COVID. And so this conversation is really timely for us to have. And I really do look forward that when we are done with this, it will be good to do periodic monthly interviews and conversations. I very much appreciate it. Thank you for your kindness as well.
That is, let's just say, a powerful way to. It's a pleasant suggestion which will be picked up. Let's take notes here, people. When you want your ideas to happen, just slide it in like that, and things will happen. Thanks a lot for that. How has been your week so far? A lot in our world, it has been a lot of BLM, Black Lives Matter concept. Did you pick up on anything of that?
Well, I did. I think that in Ghana, we saw a little bit of a young man who wanted to join the global conversation. So he had a bit of a vigil, which didn't go quite well. So he was picked up by national security.
Oh.
And later on was released and put back in the media for further conversations. But I just think that it's rightfully important that as Africans, if we want to join global conversations, we do it rightly. We need to put a lot of intellectual conversations into it because it's got a number of diplomatical infiltrations. And so if the president of the land has not yet either made a conversation or shown some sympathy, it's important that the citizens just hold on and hang on, because whatever that you do impacts largely on the country. And I do recognize that the president, Nkrumah Akufo-Addo, sent his commiseration to the life of the young man who passed on, and then just wished as well that these things do not happen on. But my week has been extremely exciting, primarily because I've been working on a policy document as it relates to the National Communication Authority and them declaring MTN as an SMP. And so from a policy think tank standpoint, I've been working very strongly on how this is extremely important for the continual development of our country in terms of the telco space, that MTN becomes such an SMP. It doesn't allow equal play for the rest of the telecommunication agencies, either Vodafone or Airtel, Tigo or Glo. They need to be sure that as a free market, everyone has equal opportunity to play. And also it gives room for investors to be able to come to know that the system is not hijacked and manipulated by a big giant. And so I've been working on those policy documents. I think that my feature articles and news release will come by Tuesday. Tomorrow is clouded with President's speech tonight at 8 o'clock. And so Tuesday, my feature article is going to be in a number of the media houses. And then following on, I'm going to be doing a lot of TV interviews, just what it looks like for the common Ghanaian in terms of the consumer, how much they are paying when they use MTN, and how MTN is not having an equal access in terms of competition with the others. I've also just been awarded as an African advisor for DPU. DPU is an online university in India. This week, I got appointed as the Africa advisor for the entire of the continent. And my role primarily is just to encourage young people to participate in online studies and also be involved in the MBA course. The MBA course for DPU is a 4-semester course, 2 years, which typically, if it was brick and mortar, if you needed to fly from any part of the world to come to India to study, you would pay $80,000. But because of COVID, online MBA course is now going for $2,750. And so my task is to raise 1,000 students across the continent who can participate in this online MBA course. And I think that COVID just gives us an opportunity to look into the technological aspect of online development and education. So I've been working on a number of things.
Yeah, very, very important topics that you are touching on, and very, very much needed for the future, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Well, we're definitely excited to have you back on. Let's just fingers crossed and hope that our convo for today would fit in the time lapse that we have, so that you could go on to the president's speech. And even if we hear you talking, because one of the policies that you have been focusing on relates to young people, it relates to the future, shaping future leaders and all of that. Last time you mentioned that you focused on young people doing the thinking. as it relates to Kandifo Institute. Could you share with us where specifically do you see the benefits of young people doing the thinking going?
Well, thank you very much. So young people, in terms of the ages, in terms of the age bracket from 13 right up to 25, or even further on young adults in their 30s, we look very strongly in terms of those conversations that young people are now beginning to take charge of the future. They are beginning to see that the future belongs to them. And so if you have elderly people setting up policies, it's important that around the table you have young people who are going to live in those policies. So every now and then people ask me, so how do you spend a lot of your time thinking about young people? Do you think that this is worthwhile? Do you think that the young people are interested in joining global conversations? I keep saying it's a yes, and it's a yes, and it's a yes. It's worthwhile to spend your time with young people. It's worthwhile to invest your knowledge. It's worthwhile to work on policy documents that are young friendly. And I've seen that young people are thinking right as it relates to these conversations.
Right. And also, how does it work, like in a practical sense? Because I know you are now pretty much, or as the picture that I'm having is, you're laying the foundation and ensuring that things can be done, for the institute. But how does it look in a practical manner? How when a young person enrolls, or let's just say that they can enroll, how does it go from start to finish, as in terms of participation?
Okay, so just to give you a bit of maybe you're looking for a genealogy in terms of a journey. So young people will come in at point A, which we would particularly say that that's the stage where you're getting to get knowledge. So it could be a learning stage, it could be a welcoming stage, and typically it will take you 3 months to understand the environment that you find yourself in, because this is a new environment in terms of thinking, and it's thinking outside the box. And so when I have conversations with young people who come in, I typically will tell you, always look out for the interest of people. Why is this person asking me to do this? What is their stake in it? What is their interest in it? And always ask questions from a policy angle. Imagine that we streamline this, of what benefit is it going to be to the larger people. So typically we'll take a bit of a 3 months journey for phase one. So phase one would basically be that you need to come in, so you're welcomed in. And as we have a lot of coaches and mentors in here, basically you need to go through a process of conversation, because then you're coming from a stage where you need to unlearn some things that you have learned over the years and then relearn some things. And so you need to go through conversations and questions with your mentors in terms of your own plan that you have for your life, but particularly just orienting you around a policy angle as it relates to libertarianism, it relates to free market, it relates to leadership, economic governance, just in those areas. And then afterwards, now it comes to the stage of building. So we need to build into the young people. And this is all phase one, which is taking 3 months in terms of building the young people. So building the young people, capacity building, soft skill building, all of the other relevant building capacities that are needed for the young people to get. Sorry.
No worries.
And adequately equipped. You do that in the building stage. And particularly in the building stage, you ensure that the young, sorry.
I'm with you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So particularly in the building stage, okay, maybe I'm sure I'm coughing, so people think I have COVID.
Don't worry. We're ensuring that nothing of that happens. That's important. For those of you who just tuned in, welcome to Africa on Focus. Here's where we share our success stories, and we are pleasantly talking COVID-free, of course, talking to our special guest, Palgrave Boakye-Danquah, who is talking to us about, the leadership that Africa really needs. A part two, actually, of an earlier interview that we had somewhat 2 weeks ago. And we then started to get to know Palgrave Boakye-Danquah and what really the Kandifo Institute is for. And there were a list of things, you know, marked and set for this coming period that the Institute has outlined, not just for impact, but really for change and for growth and all of that, to really make this youth leadership a long-lasting thing. Let me just put it that way. So if you are here, please don't hesitate to drop, you know, questions that you have. I'm going to create some time so that we also touch on that and cover some of the questions, and we talk to Palgrave Boakye-Danquah about this. For some reason, I don't know where this comes from, but I somehow have this tendency to call you His Excellency or something. I don't know where this comes from, but I feel like when I call your name,
It's a prophecy now.
I just have to make sure I don't put, you know, I don't forget something, you know, something as of that. But that was just by the
Okay.
way.
Okay. So thank you so much. So just basically to continue the conversation. So typically in terms of a chronology, you would come in to basically understand yourself. So we would call that a welcoming stage. So it will take a couple of weeks, typically 12 weeks. In terms of phase one. So we'll welcome you, we'll have conversations with you, we will try to unpack to clearly understand who you are, and then bring you into a new thinking of thinking outside the box, a new thinking of understanding what policy looks like, a new thinking of really just knowing that policy is what works in terms of creating institutions, in terms of creating systems. When you get into an environment, you really want to just put policies in place. And so you go through that welcoming stage. You would be paired with a mentor, you'll be paired with a coach, you work on various assignments. And so we'll just tell you to pick up any policy document that you can easily find. It could be a policy document on communication, policy document on road, policy document on telecommunication, entertainment, ICT, any policy document. And then we'll ask you to tweak out the questions that, because policy is all about questions, and you ask the question. So who are the people that benefit here in terms of, if I put an example on the National Communications Authority declaring MTN as an SMP, it's really a consumer issue. So it's consumer, and it's equal playing field for the rest of the telecommunication companies. So clearly, if you pick up the policy document of National Communications Authority, you should be able to open to page 16 and clearly state that at page 16, it states A, B, C, and D. And so you are either agreeing with government or disagreeing with government if you either go to page 18 that allows for competition and all of that. So that's really what you will do. And once you're done with that welcoming stage, once you're done with that conversations and questionings, then you now start planting some things into the lives of the young people. So giving them books to read, introducing them to new concepts that are around the world, Atlas, and you can encourage them to visit Atlas, encourage them to visit other think tanks that are globally recognized and known, that people will just learn some more and pick up topical issues. Then from there, you're done with phase 1.1. Then you go to phase 1.2. So phase 1.2 is where you start building into the young people, and this is where you spend a lot of time with the young people. And it's a life on life mentoring, and it's a life on life coaching. And so it's either intentional or it's either accidental. But if you know that you're in a scheme, then it's not accidental, because then everything that you're doing is intentional. And so you go through the building stage, you try to spend a lot of time with the young people, you give them documents to read, to access, you tell them to try their hands on writing things, and they write them, and then you bring them back, you review them. Phase 1.3 is where you now look for opportunities for the young people, where they can now start implementing the things that they have learned. And so you assess opportunity for the young people, you train them clearly, and you mobilize them. So you mobilize a pool of young people to either work on a particular subject or a particular theme. So Kandifo Institute is going to be 1 year in September, and my team is just going to begin this week working on a documentary. So we are going to be working on a documentary that is going to look into the future of Ghana. So where we want to be as a country in the next 37 years, where Kandifo desires to be in the next 50 years. So our 1 year documentary is going to look into something like that in terms of our impact that we have had over the past 12 months, and then what we desire to achieve over the next 12 months and going forward. So you assess them. And then point 4 of phase 1, in terms of a journey of a young person, is clearly where you now start multiplying. So you taught the young people that, so I took you through a process of point 1, point 2, point 3. Now you need to go bring another young person and start doing the same thing. And so really that's where you begin to see that there's a multiplication effect. So PBD does not need to be everywhere simultaneously. Why? Because PBD has replicated himself in many young people who clearly either think like him, act like him, walk like him, either think differently like him, either walk differently like him, either speak differently like him, but it comes to the same thing. It comes to the same point of conservatism, it comes to the same point of libertarianism, it comes to the same point of limited government, it comes to the same point of free market, it comes to the same point of adequate leadership, it comes to the same point of understanding the difference between politics and government, understanding what economy is. And so that's really what you do. So that's like phase 1. Then you go to a phase 2. Now, phase 2 is critically important because the young people need to have a firm foundation. Firm foundation is where, you know, there's a conversation every now and then when they ask, what is corruption? And many elderly people that have either gone ahead of us and are yet to come will say that corruption is an old thing that has been with us for a very long time. But if you get the foundations very well, if your foundations are strong in terms of your ethics, in terms of your values, in terms of your principles, in terms of your to-dos and your not to-dos, it builds you very much for the future. And so once we are done with phase 1 and all the 4 points that I elucidated above, then we go to phase 2. So phase 2 is where we talk about functional issues. So we realize that people come into an environment with 3 things. Number 1, they come into an environment from their upbringing. Number 2, they come into an environment from their societal impact. And then number 3, they come into an environment of the combination of the 2 that is mixed up. So now you need to unpack those and then start teaching priorities. You start teaching principles. You start teaching ethics. And so I told my team last week Friday that what I'm going to do from now to the end of the year is to dedicate every Friday to watch documentaries. So every Friday from now, I'll be watching documentaries with my team, and we'll watch anything and everything. So anything and everything means anything and everything. So anything and everything that has been documented where we can learn things from, we'll dedicate Fridays to do that. So Fridays is a day where we go into the life of the people that we may never have met, we would never meet, and those that have either aspired to join the heavenly host. So those kind of things. So we build foundations. And so the foundation time would also typically take another 12 weeks to do, basically just understanding who people are, because usually it takes 21 days to form a habit repeatedly. Right. So Andy Stanley says that you need to restate your vision every 21 days. So every 21 days, your vision leaks. So it's like a bucket that has holes in it or a bottle that has holes in it. So every 21 days, that bucket leaks. So you need to refill the vision again. So the foundation is really critical because then you need to go through a personal transformation. So you go through a personal transformation, which is the first P. Now, the second one is an O, which is observatory. So I do a lot of observational study. So I study by observing. So I get into an environment and I quickly will scan the environment. In 15 minutes, I have an idea of the culture of the environment, of the DNA of the environment. I clearly know who to talk to, who not to talk to. I clearly know who would be easily accessible, who will not be accessible. So we teach those things, because if you're going to be involved in policy, if you're going to be involved in thinking, if you're going to be involved in changing paradigms and changing thoughts and ideologies, it's important that you clearly understand these things and be aware of your environment. So your P is your personality and your principles. Your O is your observation. So the things that you observe around yourself. And then a W will clearly be the speech and the words of people. You need to pick up keywords from people. So if you are reading an article or you are reading a policy statement, I always tell them, get a red pen and get a blue pen and get a green pen. So make sure that you are picking up key points, because it is out of those key points that you would use to either develop your policy statement. So if Kandifo writes a policy statement on the fact that we are endorsing electoral commission to go ahead with the voter register because it's clearly needed for our development. And then we're also stating that, okay, it's good that people have gone to the Supreme Court to challenge the mandate of the Electoral Commission because that deepens our democracy. So if you go into those things, then you're clearly saying what deepens our democracy. You're going to bring the Constitution, you're going to bring what the Constitution states about the Electoral Commission, you're going to bring what the Constitution states about an eligible person who turns 18 years old, you're going to bring what the Constitution says about your date of birth in terms of when you need a birth certificate, the things that you need to get into the birth certificate, all of those other things. So then it's broadening your scope and your thinking. Then you're extremely very different from another young person who has not gone through the rigorous training that you would have. So W is really your word. And then you go to an A. Now it's important that you as you come along, you establish your own thinking. So if people mention Miss Abba, people should clearly say that Miss Abba is A, B, C, D. You can never go wrong. If people should mention Donny, people should be able to say that Donny is A, B, C, and D. You can never go wrong. If people should mention Palgrave, people should say Palgrave is A, B, C, and D. So E is really your established state. Your established state is what really does not change. So it's like on issues of lifestyle, you can swim like a fish, but when it comes to principles, you should stand like the rock. I mean, really that. So that's the E. And then the R, in terms of the foundation, is really relationship. You know, many people do not value relationship, but you know, I personally do not care how much money you have in your bank account, but I care about how much relationship you have, because really your network is your net worth. So if you have a lot of deep relationship, not just shallow relationship, because you know that there are people who just come around because they are either opportunistic and because of what they will get or because of something. I mean, so really you want to build deepened relationship. And so the young people that we take through a chronology, we usually tell them you need to build a healthy relationship. You shouldn't just consider this as an institute that you're walking through, but you should consider this as a journey. It's a journey that is deepening you deeper and deeper in terms of forming your own thoughts, forming your own ideologies, forming your own thinking. And when the opportunity presents itself and you have an opportunity to either speak or write, people would ask you, where did you get your training from? So really relationships is important. And I tell the young people that do not bang the door, do not close the door. So all of my life, all of my working life, there has never been an opportunity where there's been opportunity that has been created, but I've never written a resignation letter ever in my life. When I want to leave an environment, I show signs, and the signs are so evidential that you would call me for a conversation. And when we have the conversation, it's enough. It's really better than handing over a white paper that states that, dear resignation letter, I wish to let you know that I have resigned from this job. Sign, and then you submit it. That goes on your file, and that stays on your file forever. It stays on your file forever. But when you have an open conversation that, hello, sir, I am very happy for the opportunity you gave to me. I really am still part of the bigger team. I just would like to have some time to either study French or either take care of my child or either take a sport or either go on a sabbatical. And when I'm back, you can always send me assignments whilst I'm away and things like that. It's really important when you are building relationships that you never close the door, you never shut the door, you never slam it, because you don't know where your next opportunity will come and who will be seated at the other side of the desk, either interviewing you or granting an opportunity. So that's like phase 2. Then you go to phase 3. So phase 3 really is where you start handing over tools in terms of resources, where you start showing the young people where the materials are, where you clearly equip them very strongly, where they can stand on their feet without you. So you equip the young people at phase 3, where you give them opportunities to now start engaging. So if there are TV appointments and radio appointments and writing appointments, you give it to the young people, because that's really how best they can learn. So you give them those opportunities. And then phase 3 as well also focuses on the vision of the young people. So you tell them that now everybody has a vision, and so your vision will fit into a bigger vision, like a bigger vision globally. But You need to have a vision because it's out of your passion comes out of your vision. If you don't have a vision, you don't have a passion, and you can't run someone else's vision. You know, I have a vision. There's something that I really want to see. I want to see a country where every single system works. I want to see a country where the hospitals work. I want to see a country where the roads work. I want to see a country where the airport system works. I want to see a country where the transportation system works. I want to see a country where there's respect, because I was brought up by old people that were born in the 40s and 30s. So I want to see a country where these value systems are greatly ingrained in the hearts and minds of young people, and it's living out. People are living it out. So really, phase 3 is about the vision of the young people. So we talk about your own character. You know, character is who you are when other people are not watching you. And that's clearly what integrity is. And we talk about your character. So if people should mention your name, what is it associated with? It's clearly important. And so that's where we start teaching the young people. And so phase 2 is 12 weeks. Phase 3 is also 12 weeks. So we talk about your character. And then we also talk about your competency, because, you know, it's really unfortunate. It's going to be a very sad day if one person is given an appointment and you are ill-equipped for that appointment. That is why for me, because I'm a globetrotter and I've been to a number of countries that has been exposed to me, I live in Ghana, I work in Ghana, but I work like I work in the globe. Because at the time when some people are sleeping in this country, other people are waking up. And if you want to be, you know, I tell people that there's not a word, there's a word like global, but really there should be a word like local. Okay, so local is a combination of global and local. So you are being locally relevant, but you are being globally competitive. So I sit in Ghana and I have an opportunity to be on high radio, and Miss Abba and Donnie is interviewing me. Why? Because I have worked my way up to be local. So I am locally relevant and globally relevant. And so we tell the young people that you should be competent. It's important that you build depth. And I like to spell the word depth. D-E-P-T-H. D-E-P-T-H. People need to be able to build depth. If you want to have a good foundation, you must really go deeper. And I'm sure that many people have heard about the Chinese bamboo tree, how long it takes for it to grow. That if you plant the Chinese bamboo tree, it will take 5 years for you to see something on the surface of the earth. But every single day, you must diligently water the Chinese bamboo tree. But if you miss out on watering the Chinese bamboo tree, in the 5th year, you will not see anything. But what happens in the 5th year? In the 5th year, the Chinese bamboo tree grows 14 inches in a week. 14 inches in a week. So we tell the young people that it's important that you build depth. Don't be excited about shallowness, because your shallowness will give up on you. And so it's important that people build depth. So that's really about competency. You should be extremely competent for whatever opportunity that is given to you. So within your age of 20 to 30, you're experimenting, and you're gathering all the things that you need to gather in terms of what you want to do. But by the time you hit 35, which is midlife, you should have mastered on a major that when I was young, I did A, B, C, and D. I thought I mowed the garden, I washed cars, I went to be an attendant in a bar. And I think that at this stage, I want to do this. And that's really where you start building a career. Because then from 35, if you build a career that is good enough, you can build a healthy career for the next 35 years, which will span a generation. And that is really the legacy that you will leave. So that's like phase 3, and then we'll go to phase 4. Phase 4 really is about multiplying yourself, really. It's about multiplication. And so that's where you would see, I tell people that, you know, the gestation period for the rabbit. The rabbit gives birth every 2 weeks, and it gives birth many times. So if you want to see exponential growth, you need to have a rapid gestation period. But to have a rapid gestation period is to ensure that you have smaller groups of people that are multipliable and smaller groups of people that are replicable. And so if you look into Ghana, by the time Kandifo Institute is 3 years old, by 2023, I can promise you without a word of prophecy that Kandifo would have being a rabbit institute scattered everywhere along this continent of Africa. Everywhere. You would hear of an institute that is focusing on young people, an institute that is conservative in mind, an institute that believes in free market, an institute that believes in policy, public policy, advocacy, an institute that speaks and talks and walks the talk. And so clearly, the fourth stage is where you are producing. So it's like your product. So you start with your purpose, you start with your passion, you go through a process, and then you go through a product. So I've just spoken to you about the 4 Ps. I've spoken to you about phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 in answer to your question.
Yeah, that's a very a good and clear outline of what one goes through once or youngster goes through once he or she joins in. So can you tell me how is this to be regarded? Is this like an extra can people go through this as an addition to their course, or is this for people that have graduated? How is this constructed in terms of time?
So thank you very much. So, Kandifo Institute is a registered organization. It's a company. It's an institute. It's a think tank. It runs as a CSO, and so people can come in as interns from the university. People can come in as volunteers from high school, and people can come in to work fully. Because there are a number of projects that we work on. At the moment, I've been thinking about Ghana at 100, and so my team is thinking about how Ghana at 100 is going to be like. So we're gathering our materials and our resources, and anyone that comes in will work along those things. And we've
So for those of you who just tuned in, we are talking to Palgrave Boakye-Danquah, and who's probably has to resign in because of the connection. And we are just having a talk on, or basically as a broad sense, the leadership that Africa really needs. And we are zooming in on our motherland, Ghana, as in terms of how we can put the right right initiatives in place to really further build young leaders and both male and female, as it comes from our motherland. And of course, also, in the meantime, if you just tuned in, because we're going to have Palgrave to rejoin us in a bit. If you have questions or remarks or any of that, I'm going to get some time out to within all of that that he's explaining. I'm just going to give you some time to also drop a question here and there. In the meantime, I just want to give a shout out to a couple of you out there that are listening, because I know a lot of you just joined in from Ghana itself. Shout out to Nene McRich, who always tunes in. He's part of our Let's Chat Africa panel. And also Steve Mens, Amsterdam. Last time you tuned in with us, and you also shared with us an initiative that is going on. I think it had to do with agric. I think it was a Dutch-funded project that's going on for smaller or emerging companies from Ghana. And I think it's such an exchange thing. Connect him to me. You are sending in your telephone number. I will be sure to give you that telephone number to Palgrave. And I just look at the back end. Palgrave just tuned in with us again. Let's get him on board and interact some more with him. Thank you so much for tuning back in, Palgrave.
Thank you for having me. I think that there was a network challenge, but
no worries. We're even happy with the how the connection is going now. So
okay, thank you.
That's really you were talking on, as in terms of time, how is this added to one's education or one's course that he's following? Could you just give us a brief outline of that?
So basically, thank you so much. About basically in terms of time, is really up to the person. We wouldn't insist on you doing A to Z or Z to A. I mean, we are here as an institute. So if you come in as a volunteer, you come in based on what you're able to do, and we'll put you in the volunteer schedule. If you come in as an intern, we'll put you in as an intern schedule. So you either work once a week or twice a month or things like that, and it's on a project basis. But if you come in as a full-time employee, then we put you in as a full-time employee after you have gone through all the necessary requirements that gives you access to be employed by this great institute, Kandifo Institute.
Yeah. I love that. Could you share with me, because one of everything that you've outlined both in our part one of this interview and even now are such groundbreaking initiative, in a sense that it's really fine-tuned on particular areas within Ghana, or let's just say in the social sphere, which should be tackled. Why hasn't government picked up on this thus far? Do you know any of that? I know it's not your responsibility to talk on government, but why is this such a point of attention for a Kandifo Institute, and why hasn't this rather been something that you would think maybe government would pick up on?
Well, thank you very much. I think that government is big. We all are part of government. Abba is part of government, Donny is part of government, I'm part of government. Government is really what people do. So your actions and inactions contribute to the governance of a community or a country. But I would rightly state that Ghana is being a very open-minded country where think tanks are given room to operate. So the contributions of think tanks are dearly held on in high esteem, especially if you are one that is integral. You would have the opportunities of government either reaching government will reach out to you in terms of you having a look at a particular policy statement, and also really it's about whoever is leading a particular think tank, whatever, you can easily just pick up government policy statements and tear it apart and look for loopholes, look for aligning thoughts, and basically send your proposals to government. That government, I looked at, maybe let's pick education. I looked at your education policy. I think that if we continue to go this route, it's not going to be helpful for the children that we are going to give birth to. It's not going to be helpful for the children that our children are going to give birth to. And so we propose that you take a look at this in terms of short-term measure, look at this in terms of medium-term measure. But if you're going to go really a long-term measure, we think that as government, you should look at that. So really, if you voice out, if you speak, if you open up yourself, I think that your voice will be heard. And even if your voice is not heard, your documents will live to show.
Right.
Yeah, just a quick question to about the government policy making, because government also makes policies, and a lot of them, and Kandifo institutions, I've heard a lot of policy making objectives, or as also a very strong intent of the institution. So is it the idea that they're going to be critical of the available policies that the government has made, or is it that they only intend on creating or just proposing new, and just it's like what is their look, or how do you say it, their way of policy making different than the governmental policy making method or structure?
Yeah, so Donny, basically, in terms of think tank, you need to pick what is available, to work on what is available, and then you also introduce. So you pick what is seen and what is known. So based on what is known and seen, then you can add your own thinking to it. And as you add your own thinking to it, you are also proposing some policy directions. And think tanks are set up to be either critical, clearly, and then also to be intellectual. And so think tanks are supposed to be intellectual, and think tanks are supposed to think into the future. And so if government has not brought out any particular policy in a particular direction, I am, as a leader of a think tank, I need to be able to start bringing the attention of government to that particular direction. You know that COVID has not treated us fairly as a continent. I know that I've seen the efforts that the president has put in place in terms of his good leadership. I've seen how he's been extremely forthright in all of this. As a think tank, when COVID began, we predicted that there was going to be a lockdown. And I would use this platform now to also publicly state that based on our research and based on our findings, we propose and predict that a lockdown will happen in Ghana. That by August of this year, we would have a lockdown to be able
another lockdown.
Yes, another lockdown. Yes, and
Wow.
so I'm giving you an example of government has not stated that they will give a lockdown, but when I sit down in terms of looking outside of the box, and as I look at the issues that are arising, as I look at the numbers that are coming up, as I look at the recoveries, as I look at the death rate, as I look at our own economy and economic activities and government activities that needs to take place, I can predict that in the next 7 weeks, government would allow things to go in work very well, and then we'll do another lockdown. We'll do another lockdown in August for an initial of 2 weeks, and then do a third week, and then see how that looks like to be able to control the measures. Now, always remember that anytime the president speaks, he says that government needs to achieve 5 things. So the president always quotes those 5 things. 1 is to enhance testing, 2 is to enhance tracing, 3 is to enhance treatment, 4 is to limit the spread, and 5 is to see the economic impact of the COVID on the country. And so as I assess these conversations the president highlights every now and then, I think that Ghana is in a very good position to allow another 7 weeks in terms of everyone going around their activities. And then we would likely come back to a partial lockdown. And I use this opportunity to say it on the first time on HI radio that Ghana should be prepared for a lockdown in August.
Interesting, very interesting.
So, you know, Donnie, that really brings a point to mind that if you are in policy and you are in think tank, you need to be bold, because clearly the statement I just made is a very bold statement. It's an audacious statement. So tomorrow someone can call me and say, what are your facts? So Palgrave, I heard you on HI radio that Ghana should prepare for a lockdown in August. What are your facts? Then as a think tank, I bring out my facts. And then I tell you that from the 12th of March to the 12th of April to the 12th of May to the 12th of June, we have increasingly recorded these number of cases. And if I do a prediction in terms of the percentages of increase every 4 weeks, I do predict that by the 12th of July, Ghana would have X number of people testing positive, Y number of recoveries, and Z number of deaths. As a result of that, I do predict that we will have issues in the health sector, we'll have issues in the mortuary, we'll have issues in this A, B, C, and D. And so it would be extremely overwhelming, and we'll need to clean up the system and close up some measures. And so I am sure that the leadership of government would ask for a lockdown in August. Do you understand that? So clearly, that's how think tanking works. So you need to make an audacious statement, but in making an audacious statement, you need to make an audacious statement that when you are called upon and asked, your facts can really speak up for you. Because it's all about facts, it's all about data, and it's all about science.
All right.
Most definitely. Before we're gonna go to some of the questions, because they're already like coming up on my WhatsApp and even on the timeline. Let's talk about your idea as it relates to leaders. Could you talk a bit about the diversity of your mentees? Like what is particularly the type of mentees that Kandifo Institute really looks for? And I am pro women empowerment, so I've already heard about some of the initiatives for women, but could you share with us a bit about that? And also, give us your take on, are leaders born or do people become leaders?
Okay, thank you very much. So in terms of a scope of mentees, we pick raw materials. So raw materials are persons and people that do not have any skill or have skills that can be added upon. So if you already have existing skills, if you already have a bit of a journey, it's an add-on. But if you come as a raw material, a novice, without having any knowledge, any skill, we as an institute will groom you and nurture you and grow you and present you to the world. And so we can pick you from being a cobbler to being a kaya, to being a banker, to being an architect, to being a medical doctor, to being a pastor or an imam or whatever. So we don't have any categorization as it relates, because if you're looking at a holistic country, then you're looking at a holistic country that has a combination of a strong formal sector and a strong informal sector. If you mix up on just focusing on a formal sector, the informal sector will rise up to your view and you realize that you didn't do it well. So for us as a think tank, we look at a holistic journey, and it's a journey of the cobbler and the journey of a banker. It's the journey of the kaya and the journey of a journalist. It's the journey of the street young man by the side of the road who cleans the windscreen to the journey of the university graduate. And so we grew all of you because we need holistic growth. I hope that answers your question. Then the other question about leaders being born or leaders being made. For me, and this is my own independent thoughts, and I am sure that it will be that of the think tank. When children are born today, I am sure the world has recorded a good number of children that are born. Every day, children are born. When children are born, they are born with equal opportunities. Where is the divergence? The divergence is which home they go to. Mm-hmm. And so the home matters a lot. So there is no child that is born and you can clearly state that this child is born as a leader. So that answers the question that leaders are not born. Okay. Now how do leaders come about? Leaders come about by training. So everyone is a leader, but it's by training. So you're a leader in a good thing or you're a leader in a bad thing. Because you see, there's leadership at every point. The group of people who will gather tonight and would plan an evil to say that let's go and rob this bank or let's go and rob this home. There is a leader in it. So at every space, there is leadership, but it depends on what kind of leadership that is. It's either a leadership for a good cause or leadership for a bad cause. So I believe very clearly that leaders are made. If you put anybody in an incubator and you feed that person with books, I have close to about 5 million books, which I have read cover to cover. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when I sit down, I think of which chapter and which book. But there's a book that readily comes to my mind every time, written by Jim Collins, How the Mighty Fall. Jim Collins did a research on many organizations, global organizations, and clearly stated about 8 points of how organizations fall. And one of them that I always tell my friends about is, 1, unnecessary pursuit for more. So if you're an organization and you unnecessarily pursue for more, which is of your mission, vision, and the establishment for which you set up your organization, you are going to fall. Number 2, Jim Collins talks about gasping for air. And so gasping for air is where Jim Collins says, then your organization is about to die. So that's where you really cannot breathe. So you have tried everything and you're gasping for air. So you see how my mind is thinking in terms of how I'm picking up the books that I've read from my mind. So I've read Jim Collins' books, Good to Great. Okay. And so Good to Great also talks about how you can just move from a state of being good to becoming extremely great. Okay. So that's really the thinking of it. And I read a book. I read a book by Steve Covey. I read Steve Covey's book when I was 17 years old. And Steve Covey wrote a book titled The 7 Habits of a Highly Effective Person. In recent times, Steve Covey has brought up the 8th habit of a highly effective person. I won't be surprised that by the time we get to 2024, there's going to be a 10th habit of a highly effective person. But I also read a book by Robin Sherman, and Robin Sherman talks about the 5 a.m. club. So he talks about a principle about the fact that when you wake up at 5 a.m., you are ahead of your friends and you're ahead of your team. So really, in terms of leadership, I believe that if you put a leader in an incubator, or if you put an individual in an incubator and you begin to feed the individual with certain materials and resources, the next time you realize that individual becomes a leader. So leaders are made and leaders can be made. And I believe that I can pick up a kayaye from the side of the road. I can give that kayaye to Miss Abba and I say, Miss Abba, incubate this lady. And this lady will come out refined, transformed. And as she begins to share her story of how her days of kayayeness was, I'm sure many people are going to be like, wow. So really, you need a wow moment when you pick up a leader. So if you pick up an individual and the individual cannot come out with that wow moment, I don't think that you've worked out very well. You need to be able to work out individuals such that when they come out, it becomes a wow moment.
But it does mean though that because each individual have their, well, and can you say that they're born with their character, or is character also something you grow up to, let's say, to become? So you grow into your character, or are you born with certain characters? Because if you are born with a character or a personality, and leadership is, I think, within the intellectual concept as well, is seen as a personality. It can be taught as a skill. However, they do recommend that in case that you have personalities that that warrant or facilitate leadership much more than other personalities. But listening to how you can make someone or to put them into an incubator and bring the leadership out of them, or turn them into leaders, it does mean that in that process, your natural personality will either have to be, let's say, overridden, so override them, or we just find that leadership competency within your personality, and explore and expand on that one. So which one is it?
So you are right, Tony. Yeah, you are very right, because we don't rule out the DNA of an individual. So when you are born into a family, you carry the DNA of that family. So the DNA is the chromosomes that makes you. But when you are born into that family, the environment also is part of the nurturing process. So you can be a great person, and you can be born into a great family, but you can be brought up by a not so great family, and you will become a not so great person. And so your character and your attitudes and your DNA, all of that is formed by where you are born and also the things that you see. So I'll give you an example. My father was a medical doctor. He was an ENT specialist, an ear, nose, and throat surgeon. And in the medical world, they will call it otolaryngologist. And so that was my father. So I grew up in a home where I have breakfast in the morning, I have lunch in the afternoon, I have dinner in the evening. So it's a setup. I grew up where I saw my father wear a 3-piece suit to go to work, and he would go to work with his equipment, his tools to work in terms of as a medical doctor. So I saw that. So it formed in my system. The clothes that they bought for me reminded me of the home that I came from. So I wore suits going to church as a young person. Okay, very, very young. I wore a 3-piece suit going to church. So it's really important. What you said is very true. Your character, where you are born, it's fused into it, but then also it's enhanced So if you come with those skills, it's an enhanced skill. But then if you do not come with those skills, they are skills that can be taught. So now, if I pick up a child who was not born in the manner in which I was born and raised in the manner in which I was raised, because I know how I was raised, I can be able to take that child through it. So I tell my team, wear high heels because it helps your confidence. And I'm sure Ms. Abba would agree. Wear high heels because it helps your confidence. Okay? Put on a bow tie because it makes you a perfect gentleman. Okay? Put on a flying tie because it also makes you a perfect gentleman. Put on a nice cologne because it makes you smell nice. So those things can be taught. You understand that? And if you see person A who came from A environment and you know how that person A environment is like, and you put a person in a B environment and you see how transformed the person has become, you go like, wow. So it's really that wow moment. You had those DNA, you had those character traits, but they were more recessive. They were not dominant. So you needed someone to bring up that dominance and tell you, do this, it works. Do this, it works. Do this, it works. And once you realize that when you do A, B, and C, and it works, then you now begin to see that, oh, this is really good and it's part of me.
All right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. In the meantime, before we steal all of your time, and again, this is too short of a time to have that good conversation. But I think we really have to pick up on a lot of questions that I see scrolling down our timeline. Most definitely, we should talk about. I just want to give out a shout out to, he should be like, I don't know, he should be awarded as a best listener. Nanekwesi, thank you for tuning in, for joining into the conversation. One of the questions, Nene, he's one of our Let's Chat Africa, which is a monthly segment that comes here on Africa on Focus, where we talk to millennials as it relates to Africans and topics regarding being African. He asked, does your training extend beyond the borders of Ghana? And if so, how is training delivered to those beyond the borders?
Okay, thank you very much. I think that in this season of COVID, we would make very good use of Zoom. So our training does go beyond the borders of Ghana. I've done training in 78 countries in close to about 3,000 different communities and neighborhoods. So yes, our training does go beyond the borders of Ghana. And yes, is that all? How is the training delivered? So yes, it's either in person or we would make use of technology, basically. Right. Yeah.
Which is definitely the future, or it is the now and the future.
The now, yeah.
Absolutely. Charity Ofusohene, who's saying, wow, even though it is still difficult to think about, we may likely need another partial lockdown. However, shouldn't we look at more education?
Well, yes. So basically, people don't believe that COVID is real. I can appreciate why people do not believe it's real. It's basically because the symptoms of COVID are symptoms that are similar to what we already know, which is fever, cough, and all of that. And then you just take, you go to the hospital and they diagnose you as having malaria. So education is clearly important. Right. And people need to be educated. I think that we are getting there as a country. I think that globally we are getting there as well. And the more people are educated, the more people clearly come to understand that this is a global pandemic that people need to be careful about and ensure that they stay safe. I'm not sure we have seen the surge of COVID in terms of its global impact, but I can predict that by the time we get to 2022, COVID would have fully gone. Then we'll need to wait for another 100 years, which I'm sure none of us will be here to see what will come afterwards. But we should give ourselves a bit of a 2-year journey with this pandemic, and then also give ourselves a bit of a 5-year recovery rate. And so, Tony, clearly I'm answering your question as well as it relates to thinking. So you see how I'm thinking, and you see how I'm really raising the issues. So like someone will say, okay, so Palgrave, you're saying that COVID is going to be with us for 2 years. What are your facts? So then I'll raise up my facts in terms of historical analysis of the flu that happened 100 years ago, how many people it killed, how long it lasted, and all of that. And I bring that into conversation. So it's intellectual. Then I go, so the people are saying, okay, so how are you saying that it's going to take 5 years for us to recover? Then I also go back and then I look at the havoc that is created and on. You understand what I'm saying? So really, that's really the thing. So yes, we would look into more education, and I think that this platform gives an opportunity to educate more people about the various issues that are happening around the world and how we should all stay safe. People need to take responsibility for their health. People have underlying issues. In some parts of Africa, and I stand to be corrected, but I'm not sure I'll be corrected. The reason is that people do not take care of their health. People do not even visit the hospital in a year because they feel they have not fallen sick. But if you have lived in the Western world, I take a mid-year review of my health every year. Whether I'm sick or not, I go to the hospital. And I go to the hospital not because I'm sick. And so those conversations as well need to be held, that you need to go to the hospital not because you are sick. You can just go for a review because there are some things that happen to you internally in your being you are not aware of. Prayer cannot reveal that to you. I'm sorry. You need to go to the hospital and go through an MRI scan or go through something and either see that it's a hemorrhage or something developing. This afternoon I was in a conversation with a few friends, and the man said that he's been given 5 years to live, and so he's on his extra bonus time. So on his extra bonus time, he's really taking care of himself. Maybe peradventure he would have an extension of an extra 15 years or 30 years. Those kind of things. So this COVID gives us an opportunity to realize that everybody must take responsibility for their health.
Absolutely, and do it, with determination.
Absolutely.
If you don't get that right, there is no you can't be good enough to make any business or to meet any meeting or gathering. If your health is not good. So that is definitely one. One of the questions is also if does the curriculum build one from scratch per their field of interest, let's say arts, engineering, science, or a general training that's applicable in all fields?
Okay, so I need to put a disclaimer here. Kandifo Institute is not a university. And
right.
So if you need to build a field of interest in terms of from scratch, like arts, engineering, science, you need to go to the university. What Kandifo Institute does is a policy think tank. It's oriented around free market. It's oriented around conservatism. It's oriented around libertarianism. It's oriented around individual liberty, limited government. It's oriented around leadership, governance, and economy. And so if you come as an engineer, we would be able to have conversations around free market. We'll have conversations around public policy. If you come as a scientist, we'll have conversations around individual liberty. We'll have conversations around public policy, advocacy. We'll have conversations. If you come as an art, we'll have conversations around all of the things that we have been set up to establish. Now, realize that I spoke about Jim Collins and I spoke about How the Mighty Fall, unnecessary pursuits for more. And so this question is very tempting, it's very idealistic, it's very rich. And I'm like, wow, why not? Maybe it will be good for us to consider building from scratch. So we have an art school, have an engineering school, have a science school. But clearly, just because we do not want to fail as an institute and as a think tank, and just because we have read so much and learned so much from people that have unnecessarily pursued for more, people that have either set up banks and went into hospitality, and people that have set up banks and went into transport, and later on their bank collapsed and all of that. We are a think tank. We are established to do public policy. We are established to do research. We are established to do advocacy. We are established to do conversations of free market. We are established to do libertarian conversations. We are established to do conservatism. And we are established to hold conversations on leadership, governance and economy, which is extremely youth focused.
Right. I love that. Shout out to also another one that tuned in, Sylvia Ada, who's saying a firm foundation begins with the education system. Students in school should be challenged to think critically. What do you think about that statement?
I agree. And I need to be able to also state that education is not just brick and mortar, because then you're educated in a formal and an informal way. So you're home, you're educated, you walk by the side of the streets, you're educated. So I spoke about observatory. So you need to take into strong cognizance your observatory analysis that would be able to educate you. And so, yes, I do agree that a firm foundation begins with an educational system. But clearly, when I look at educational system, I need to be able to tell my children that watch this kind of channel because they are home. And so that's all part of an educational system. And so it's really not just a brick and mortar, but it's really about thinking critically in an educational system that is set up in the fabrics of the entire society in terms of the 7 pillars of society. So education is mixed up in that. So if I go to church, I need to be educated, and it's not just bluff. It should be real education.
Right. One of our special guests that we had here just a few weeks ago said, real power holds in the ability to create new leaders. What is your take on that?
I agree. So real power does hold in your ability to create new leaders. But I also need to add that in your ability, it should be your capacity, because it's not just about an ability, it's also about your capacity. Capacity is how capable you are to be able to build into the new leaders that are coming. So I agree with it. So if I have an opportunity to train 500,000 young people in terms of building into them good leadership skills over the next 5 years, I'm not sure they'll de facto to someone else, and I'm also not saying that they'll de facto to me, but I'll have at least, if not 5% of influence, I'll have 3% of influence, and I need to use that 3% of influence wisely. So it's right. Power is really building into people.
Definitely. Before we're almost gonna round up and let you be on the rest of your evening. There are a couple of things that are mentioned as Black people's problems or Africa's problems. You tackled a bit on that last time, which is partying on the weekends, for instance, not being on time, being quite of a laid back. These global things which we are infamous for sometimes. What is your take on that? What are some of the few things that you also tackle, with the Kandifo Institute, and how do you intend to change this type of stereotype?
Cultural behaviors.
Cultural behaviors, right?
Thank you, Donnie, and thank you, Abba. It takes time for people to form a habit and a culture. Culture, as we know, is defined as a way of a lifestyle of a people. What the people eat, what the people wear, what the people do. It's not going to be rocket science to change the lifestyle and the culture of a particular kind of community or country if the people have lived with this for a very long time. It's almost become religious. And when lifestyle and cultures become religious and dogmatic, it becomes very difficult to change. One of the things, as I read Nkrumah in terms of the Singapore guy, I believe in this, and I'm sure that the old man upstairs, God, would help us see this in our lifetime, that a generation is changed in 35 years. And I see Abba, and I see Donnie, and I see myself, and I see the rest of the people that are listening to us, and I can almost predict that all of us are young people. And I can also predict that if all of us are young people, we should all make a pledge that in the next 35 years, we will change that culture by beginning today. What does that mean? What that means is that I need to be able to start changing the culture from my children who are less than 10 years old. I need to start telling my children, you need to dress well and stay home, not because you are going out. It's a culture. I need to tell my children, you need to eat with a cutlery, not because when you go to the hotel, you need to know how to eat with a cutlery. It's a culture. So you need to start changing those cultures from the children. Nkrumah, who said, he came to Ghana during Kwame Nkrumah's time, and Singapore was very poor, extremely poor. What was happening in Singapore? They were living with chickens, real poultry. They were living with poultry. And Nkrumah said that we cannot continue to live like this. And he came to Ghana and watched the system of Ghana. And he left very disappointed in the country. And he said that his country is going to be better than Ghana, even though he admitted his own mistakes. What did he do? What Nkrumah began to do was to start putting education in terms of knowledge in the schools. So he started teaching the children, do not spit, do not litter, do not insult, do not do this, do not do that. In 35 years, Nkrumah had moved Singapore from a third world to a first world. And so really, if we are looking into changing a culture, I don't think we can do it with any of the elderly people. I think that we can clearly do it with the young people, ourselves becoming the change agents, our children becoming the implementers, our nephews and nieces becoming the implementers, the grandchildren becoming the implementers. And in the next 35 years, I promise you, we will see a refined culture because it's a new culture that has been introduced.
Yeah, I could see that.
Beautiful.
I could definitely envision that from taking place. It doesn't sound strange. It doesn't sound impossible because I know a lot of the talks, or let's just say as it relates to the future of Ghana, sometimes as in as in terms of having high hopes, but not necessarily believing in those hopes coming forth. Before we round up, I just want to share one thing, and that is, Donnie, the conversation that you had with your dad. Remember that you pointed that one out at one of our interviews that we had. It was about the Kwame Nkrumah dream. Remember that one? Could you share with us? Because I would really like for Palgrave to hear on that and what he thinks about that as it relates to making a particular change happen. Could you share with us
Right.
the roundup?
Yeah, right. Because so I was with my dad a couple of weeks ago, and we were just talking about how generations, let's say, think. And it was, to me, it was funny to hear him say that, looking at the technological equipment and advancement that we have now. And he was like, well, if we had those things back in those days, like when he was younger, the good things or the things he would have done. And so to me, it was remarkable in the sense that it's the idea or the thought that he has now, reflecting on something in the past, which kind of like had me also realize, all right, so here's one reflecting on the past and talking about this idea that he has now. We have the idea. I have the idea now, and I'm in the present. So I asked him, all right, so what would you do differently if you were, back then, if you were back in the time with the advancement that we have now? So he went on to speak about that, and one of the things that he also said was that, in a sense, because I was saying it's funny because the idea, I believe, every generation has a group of people or a group of whether it be the majority or minority, but there are a lot of those who do see certain things and do want to bring changes to on a national level. And so he was saying that it was when it comes to politics, that it was now that the Ghanaian government have pulled back or went into the archives and pulled out the plans that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah had made, infrastructure plans that he had made for Ghana and the cities and etc., and are actually building the Ghana infrastructure based on those plans. So what that pointed out to me was the fact that the idea and the blueprint already is there. Only if we can, most of the time we already know, but only if we are determined to use that blueprint or to actually act upon those things, then changes can be really made. And that was such a big um, big getaway, or to take away from that conversation I had with him.
Is it true? Is it true, or is that right, or is that wrong?
For me,
Yeah. What would
Well,
your
yeah, in general.
okay, no. So basically, to be honest, I think that we have to commend fathers like Donny, Donny's father, because they are the kind of people that we need as a younger generation to spur us on. And so when they look into the past, they wish that they were living in our generation and our setting.
Mhm.
And I'm sure they would have taken more risk. They would have been more bolder. They would have taken more action, because then they know that their actions and their boldness and their risk would give the future a better one. So I'm happy that your father had those conversations with you. That is why I stated that if, as a think tank, if you write and you speak and it's not even heard, many years to come, people will pick up your writing and people will pick up your audio or your video and take a listen to it. But clearly, Ghana has a blueprint. Ghana has great minds. Ghana has great thinkers. I personally know some very great Ghanaians who have held the president of Rwanda, what's his name, Kagame. Who have held Paul Kagame in his cabinet. There's one prominent Ghanaian who worked out the entire fabric and structure of Rwanda as it is today. And so there are great minds in this country and great minds outside of this country. And it's our time as young people. I see the names on the screen and I call into action Miss Abba and call into action Donny and call into action myself that we should be the young people that blaze the torch and hold the torch to chart the path for the other younger people that are coming ahead of us. And whatever documents that we can churn upon, let's do it right and do it intellectually and be sure that our impact is felt very strongly, because we have only one life to live. It's not two. And that's why Donny is having a conversation with his father, and that's why his father is having a conversation. And so tomorrow, Donny's father wants to see Donny as a more action-oriented person, a younger person who lives in the now and in the reality, because this is the time, like his father rightly said. I lost my father 20 years ago, but I incline my ears to conversations from people that were born in the 30s, people that were born in the 20s, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s. Those are my friends. 1960s, 1970s. Those are my friends, and it gives me a good balance of being very traditional and also being very modern. So I live in their world and I understand this generation and this century. And I think that we should poise ourselves for that. So our dressing must be modern, but our thinking must be old, so we can be able to balance it.
Absolutely. And
Beautiful.
On that note, before we round up, here is one question, and which is a good question actually. Which culture do you advocate we teach our children? You haven't traveled all over, and I know Kimo Kamara. He's a community leader actually, based in the Netherlands. What would you recommend as in terms of us being Africa, looking on forward, collaborating, youth leadership, and all that we talked about? Which culture do you advocate we teach our African children?
Well, that's a very good question, and that's a very broad question. But
Yeah.
I would clearly just pick it. I'm not sure. You remember the other time I used this same pen and I said that you should be able to. So for Kamara, you should be able to have a relationship with your child. So this is you and this is your child. So this ongoing horizontal relationship must continually exist. It must not break. And
Mm-hmm.
so you teach your child the culture that you know from this relationship. Now, you should be able to teach your child a horizontal relationship in terms of culture. And everyone has a supreme being. And so yours could be God, it could be Allah, it could be Buddha, it could be Confucius, it could be whoever, you know. And so once you begin to teach these things, I think that you form a culture out of that. I cannot take a culture out of the Bible. I think that my own culture, in terms of my value system and composition, has come from my horizontal relationship with my family. That has been my immediate impact, and then my own vertical relationship with my God, Jesus Christ. So I am here, God is here. So I pick His culture, and it reflects in my lifestyle. So that would be a very quick answer to your very broad question.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think I would have to agree with your suggestion of you coming back regularly. There are a few, milestones also that I picked up on, as in terms of Kandifo Institute online. So it would be our pleasure to have you back on, let's say a month from now or 1.5 months, to talk on some more. Myself and Donnie have so many questions even listed, as it relates a bit, goes a bit deeper into the values that you talked about and so forth. But, we have to respect time. Um, I again would really like to thank you for your time so far.
Yeah.
Are there any last words and something that you could just impress on us to motivate us to also move with Kandifo Institute or towards the direction you're going for the rest of this year and many more years to come?
Well, thank you. I think that I picked something very strongly from Donny, and I would like to use that to conclude. And so Donny spoke about generation think. And I think that this is our generation and we need to think. Many of us are in our young ages. It takes 35 years to impact a generation. If you are 40 and you add 35 to it, in the next 70, by the time you're 75, you should have impacted very clearly and very strongly. And so going forward, Kandifo Institute is going to be making all the impact that is needed in all the sectors that is needed, in all the countries that is available in this world. We are not limited to Ghana. We are not limited to the continent of Africa. We are open to go global. We are open to go to Europe, open to go to North America, open to go to Middle East, open to go to everywhere, Latin America, everywhere. And so I leave my last words, I pick from Donny very strongly that we are a generation that must think. So generation think. And so Donny, maybe you should launch an initiative as a follow-up to this conversation called Generation Think. And we'll all come in to support you in terms of inspiration from your father. So I throw that to you.
See, that's the perfect display of a think tank. They think and then you throw. You think.
I think it does. I think it does. You definitely pick up on that. Palgrave, again, thank you so much for tuning in with us.
So much. Thank you.
We'll be following up on you, and of course, keep in touch for our next meeting as we plan that ahead. And again, don't hesitate to inform us through WhatsApp on whatever is going on, because we will be readily available to spread the word.
Thank you.
have a good evening. I know that you gave us a teaser. You gave us like a first-hand thing of what's to come. I hope the president, His Excellency, won't be mad at you.
Yeah.
I hope that won't happen.
No, not at all.
Okay, great. Thanks again for your time, and have a blessed furtherance of the week.
Thank you very much, Mr.
All right. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So here we are, Africa on Focus with myself and Johnny. Here we are again, Johnny. Yes. Well, I guess that will be next week for our Let's Chat Africa. We'll be returning with Nene and Liz, and we're actually going to talk about the quote unquote the problems of Black people, and it all has to do with how are we going to unite as Africans the more, and how are we going to deal with the internal things that go on within our communities so that we could go forward. So I'm actually looking forward to that. What are your plans for the week?
Just the regular. We working on our thesis or finding a topic for our thesis. So yeah, think. I need a think tank right now.
Yeah. So that means we should form it, right? That is really the goal. And shout out to all of the listeners, Evan, who also took the time out to listen and connecting us with awesome people to have here on the show. And Donnie brought a cup just to make sure that you know. Also, shout out to Nane Kwesi, who says very insightful. Thank you for always tuning in every week. And also to others, Kimo Kamara, who tuned in with us and to listen and kind of have some time out for us. This leaves us to the end of Africa on Focus, and every time as we end off the recap, you can watch it both on YouTube, Africa on Focus, and also on Facebook here. The recap also comes out. You're grabbing your bottle, Donnie. No, don't let Evan hear you. Don't let Evan even see you. On that note, also we'll be returning still on lockdown specials next week Sunday from 8 p.m. Africa on Focus will be coming to you live on Facebook and YouTube from now, and of course the High Radio channel. A big stay safe, stay healthy this week. COVID-19 is still so real, and make sure that you follow us also on social media. Donnie is hiding. He's being a bit sneaky on his social media activity.
I might come back on Facebook. I'm still not on Facebook, but we're gonna
I believe you. You can also follow High Radio on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And myself also, which is Miss Abba ms.aba, or this is Miss Abba. Stay blessed, stay safe, and let's meet up again next week. Okay,
right.
bye-bye.
Bye all.